As the 49ers sit at 5-5, are the fans and more importantly, some in the media starting to turn on Kyle Shanahan? Plus, what are the health updates with some of the 49ers' biggest players? Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa. We'll get into all that and more on today's Gold Standard podcast brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. What is good, everybody? Welcome to Stats and Cone on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Networks. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Grant Cone, live from Levi's Stadium. You got your nice little spot picked out there?
You know why? Because the Niners love me so much. They're like, Grant, this is the best spot. You're our favorite reporter. Go say what you want about Kyle Shanahan. Just go. That's why I'm here.
And you've been saying some things.
Trying to say some things in a respectful way.
I saw your video about the fraud comment.
I got worked up because it's like a fraud has a certain connotation, and I think that's a little heavy-handed for what Kyle Shanahan may or may not be.
Now, did you walk that back yourself, or did the team say that they were ticked off at you?
The team didn't say anything. I walked that back myself. I am a mature adult, 36, almost 37 years old. Sometimes I have moments of introspection. It's true.
Okay. Look, I get worked up when we talk about stuff, as you clearly know and clearly try to do every time we do a show together. So sometimes, especially when you talk as much as we do for a living, stuff comes out of your mouth that you wish you could just immediately sort of pull back. So good for you. Justin is asking what happened to the music in the intro. Justin, it's a long story that I'm currently trying to work out. I'm hoping that it comes back, but we will see.
Have you noticed that you can't post all 22 clips on YouTube anymore?
No. Is that the case?
Well, your video will get demonetized. You could do it for the NFL. The NFL will make the profit. So that's if you want to donate to a struggling league, a struggling organization, use them all 22.
It is wild. Like every time people use all 22, that's promoting your product.
Yeah.
That's it, because it makes the conversation so much more compelling when you can actually show plays and talk about it. But that's unfortunate.
But the NFL doesn't want actually any actual analysis of their players, coaches. They just want, these guys are great. These guys are incredible. This is the best. They're all did great.
That's disconcerting, especially on Mondays. Vish and I usually do like a big film heavy show on Mondays. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Kyle Shanahan, and I couldn't help but notice, Grant, it feels like this past week especially, a different tone around Kyle. There's certainly a very vocal part of the fan base that wants Kyle Shanahan fired. You have, on the record, have said if he doesn't make the playoffs, he should be fired. I'm even seeing some very critical articles from other members of the 49ers press corps, which is surprising. Like, I feel like things are starting to turn when it comes to the perception of Kyle Shanahan.
And I think it's only natural. I don't think it's that people have an agenda or trying to push him out the door. I think a lot of fans feel this way. Who knows? Maybe some players feel this way. This is year 8. We're not talking year 3 or year 2. Like, he's had a lot of chances to get over the hump. And like, it looks like he's sliding. I mean, it looks like he's lost 2 Super Bowls. It's year 8. Name me a coach who's lost 2 Super Bowls, stayed with the team that they started with, and eventually in year 10, 11, 12, 13 won a Super Bowl. It's never happened. Ever. So I think at a certain point, people are looking at him like, okay, man, you've done a lot of great stuff. You built this, but I don't think you're going to win a Super Bowl. And I don't want to wait 14 years to figure it out because you've never beaten Mahomes. You've never beaten Lamar Jackson. You've never beaten Josh Allen. You have a 396 winning percentage in 1-score games. You lost your Super Bowls the same way every time with the lead in the second half and a bunch of passes. I've seen enough. I know exactly who you are, and you are very good. And maybe you'll win a Super Bowl somewhere, but not here. I mean, I think that's fair to say.
That's one way.
Even if you don't agree with it.
I would say, hasn't he earned 1 year of not making the playoffs, given all the success he's had, especially considering they just got to a Super Bowl last season? Is it so unreasonable to say, all right, you know what? This roster is older. It's at the end of the run. Players, we had serious injuries this year. Isn't it reasonable to also say, you know what? This year sucks. It's kind of a lost year. Get back at it next year.
I think that's totally reasonable. It's not the route I would go, but it's reasonable. So let's talk about it. If the Niners were to do that, As a fan, Rob, why would you feel hopeful that next year would be different than this year?
Well, first and foremost, health. You would hope that health would be a little better.
Can you expound on that? Like, what you think McCaffrey at 29 will be back like he was at 27, or you think Ayuk's going to look like he did before his knee injury? Or this is it's an old team.
Yeah, I think Ayuk. I mean, obviously you'll have Ayuk for at least part of the season, so that will help. You may have Dre Greenlaw. I don't know. I just think that don't forget,
you have Debo.
This team was so banged up they had to cancel preseason practices with the Saints. Remember, because they didn't have enough healthy people to actually do it. They had 23 people at one point that couldn't participate in practice. That's more than 2 full starting lineups. Because it's 11.
I don't really buy the injury excuse this year. I mean, they have their starting quarterback. McCaffrey went down. Mason was great. Garendo was great. Ayuk went down. Jennings was better. Say what you want about Pro Football Focus. They are currently the 4th highest graded team on Pro Football Focus. And that has nothing to do with talent. That's just execution. So to me, again, this is a team coached by a coach who is 396 in one-score games. They are losing one-score games. And in the past, this was a team that had the belief that they would win. And now, since they lost in the Super Bowl by 1 score. They did it to the Rams and the Cardinals and the Seahawks. I think it's a team that's almost expecting to give it up at the end, which is why they got in a fight in Tampa with a lead. They were winning when they got in that fight. I think they just expect to lose now, or they don't expect to win like they did in the past if the game is close.
But how can you cite, they're number 4 on PFF and then want to fire that guy? That doesn't just happen to Kyle Shanahan. It's because of Kyle Shanahan.
Well, in what he did as a personnel guy, he helped put the roster together. But to me, a 5-5 team that's the 4th highest graded team on PFF, that screams poorly coached. That's a team that is underperforming given their talent. No question about it. I mean, they have some of the best receivers in the league, even without Ayuk, Kittle, Jennings, McCaffrey. I mean, they have a lot of receivers. They have a really good secondary. It's hard to throw the ball against the 49ers. They have a lot of talent. They have the 2nd-ranked offense, the 6th-ranked defense, and they're 5-5. What is that, bad luck? Or is that the coach who can't win close games?
Some of it's bad luck. Some of it is the coaching decision. Some of it's special teams, which falls on him because he's clearly not set the same standard for special teams. But I'm just saying, why wouldn't you trust the guy that built up this roster that has been so good for so long to build it up again?
Maybe. We'll see what he does. I mean, he hasn't really wanted to do that. He's really wanted to keep this core together. And I think coaches that last a long time in one place, either their voice gets stale or they turn over the roster a lot. And Kyle hasn't turned over the roster a lot. It's been a core of 8 or 9 guys that have been here for a long time. And even I wonder how much belief they have in him anymore. Maybe he could do that. But I think also, people say, okay, he might be the next Andy Reid. Well, Andy Reid never won a Super Bowl in Philly. They eventually had to let him go. And maybe you think that was the wrong move, but they could have been waiting 30 years. He never would have won one. They won one with Doug Peterson. Sometimes organizations need a fresh start. Sometimes coaches need a fresh start. And I think it would be in Kyle's interest and the Niners' interest to start fresh.
I don't really. I disagree with that. I think, yes, he's wanted to keep the roster, but I don't think that there was a huge push for people after the Super Bowl this year to say, tear it all down. I think people thought you could make another run with this core. I think that Kyle would tell you, and I think the team recognizes that this was the last year with this core and that they are going to have to make some changes in the offseason. And I would want the guy that built it up the first time to be the guy that can maybe build it up again, especially because they just had arguably their best draft class ever. So, again, that's more faith for me that they will be able to build it up again. So I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here for me. I'm not, although I have noticed a significant turn in how he is perceived. Do you separate it, though? Do you think that Jed will actually fire him this season?
I think it's an actual possibility. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but all I know is that this is the worst coaching job of Kyle Shanahan's career with the 49ers this season. And I don't know where it came from. Last year was really good. He was on it in 2023, but since 2024, since he didn't know the rule in overtime, it's been one blunder after another, man. Everyone knows he lost that game. He was the reason they lost. He didn't know the rule in overtime. He didn't know the rule in overtime. You can argue whether that was the reason they lost or not, but he didn't know the rule in overtime. And ever since then, man, he's been making strange decisions, giving an extension to Christian McCaffrey when he's hurt, scapegoating Steve Wilkes for the loss when it wasn't his fault, replacing him with Nick Sorensen, who's objectively worse. I mean, it's just been one after another with Kyle this year. 3 blown fourth quarter leads to inferior teams in their own division. Getting into a fight with Brandon Ayuk on the practice field over shorts, chewing out Brock Purdy at his locker in front of the media. I mean, it's been what? Who is this guy? He doesn't even shave anymore. I don't know who this guy is anymore, man. And if he doesn't get it together, I could see Jed York being like, dude, you're not the guy we hired. We loved you, dude, but you are not the guy we hired.
He just got an extension last year.
Mm-hmm. And that was before he lost his second Super Bowl.
So you think that they're going to...
You can see it on his face, man. He's not the same since he lost the Super Bowl. He's not. He looks 5 years older than he looked in February.
Well, yeah, it's stressful,
a mullet.
Man.
What person has a mullet when things are going good? Yeah, no one.
That's a poor choice.
That's a sign that things are not going good. Oh, dude, you hear about Mark? He's sporting a mullet. Oh my God, have you talked to him?
We got to have an intervention.
You gotta have an intervention. Hey, Mark, we love you, man, but the mullet ain't it, and we think it might be indicative of something else.
Jack Jackson, YouTube channel member, says it's time to find a new offensive line coach. I agree. I mean, I think it may be time. They could not, like everyone wants to say, use Jordan Mason more. I don't think it was Jordan Mason. I think the offensive line was awful last week. Listen to Brian Baldinger on 95.7 The Game.
They're building a run block without George Kittle is horrible. They played Jalen Moore as the second tight end, Saubert, Moore, like they were terrible on Sunday. I showed like 8 McCaffrey runs where he went for 2 yards or less. And honestly, they were horribly blocked plays. They've been running the same 5 plays from different formations and different motions since Kyle's been there. And they couldn't execute at the point of attack.
That's an indictment on Chris Forrester and on Kyle Shanahan for just not being able to execute your staple plays. No offense is going to be able to function if you can't execute your staple plays. And they did not do that on Sunday. No question about it.
Problem with that is that Jordan Mason did get 2 carries and he did average 6.5 per. So we just don't know what he would have looked like with 10 or 15 carries. Yeah, they didn't block well. I saw the clips. He's dead on. But Jordan Mason is running like a dude with his hair on fire, and he gets more yards after contact than just about anyone. So I would have liked to see. I mean, we know the Niners beat the Seahawks a month ago, featuring Mason and Garendo. The fact that they didn't go back to that is strange. Again, it's another thing. It's like, Kyle, dude, like, where are you right now? Where is your head? You're so much better than this. And I think that's why people are starting to wonder, like, year 8, 2 huge disappointments. It might be the slow downslide from here on out. We'll see. You want to bring him back next year? Okay. But let's say he goes 8-9, misses the playoffs next year. People chalk it up to injuries or whatever. Comes back next year, 9-8, no appreciable improvement. At that point, year 9, would you be thinking about moving on?
Thinking about? Yeah, maybe. Thinking about it. I would want to, it depends on who else is available also.
So you want to see 14 years? What is the number? 14, 15?
Do you think Mike Tomlin should be fired?
Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl.
So?
Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record.
Do you think Mike Tomlin should be fired?
I don't think Mike Tomlin should be fired, no. Mike Tomlin's doing a great job this year. He's never had a losing season, and he's a champion. To compare Kyle Shanahan to Mike Tomlin is disrespectful to Mike Tomlin.
Well, hold on. You're saying 8 years without a Super Bowl. Mike Tomlin's gone 16 years without a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but Kyle's never won one, and he's lost 3. So there's a difference.
Mike Tomlin hasn't even won a playoff game in 8 years. Not even a single playoff game.
Mm-hmm. But to compare him to Kyle Shanahan is just disingenuous.
No, I don't think it is at all.
It is. Because one's a champion and one isn't.
Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl, so he gets to coach forever now? He can never be fired?
Well, what has Mike Tomlin done to get fired? He's a champion. He's brought the city of Pittsburgh a ring, and he's never had a losing season. He's been in between quarterbacks. Now he has a competent quarterback, and he's got a top 5 team in the league. So I don't think he's on the hot seat. Whereas Kyle is on the verge of missing the playoffs and having a losing season with the 4th highest graded team on PFF. That's incredible.
But you can't ding Kyle Shanahan for having the 4th highest graded team on PFF. He coaches that team. Like that.
I know, to a 5-5 record. You'd think someone like maybe like Jonathan Gannon, who has a far inferior team in Arizona. He's 6-4. Imagine if Jonathan Gannon were the coach of the 49ers right now. I'm thinking they'd be better than 5-5.
I mean,
because good coaches get more out of their team than the talent in front of them. That's what good coaching is. And bad coaching is when the sum of the parts is worse than the talent. That's bad coaching.
I just don't know how you could say Kyle's gone 8 years without a Super Bowl, so he should be fired, when Mike Tomlin has gone 8 years without a playoff win. And you're not even questioning it because he won a Super Bowl 16 years ago.
Well,
That's
again,
logically
Mike Tomlin is 8-2 right now. He's in the running for Coach of the Year. Kyle Shanahan is one of the worst coaches in football this season. Name one coach who hasn't gotten fired yet who is doing less with more.
Name one. Well, I mean, only a few coaches have gotten fired so far this year.
Who is doing less with more?
But Kyle Shanahan was in the Super Bowl.
You can't. I'm talking about this year, Rob. This year.
Yeah,
Who is doing?
So you're saying, well,
how can a great coach be one of the worst coaches in the league for a whole year? Now, maybe he'll turn around this week, but he hasn't.
Are you firing Kyle because he hasn't won a Super Bowl in 8 years, or are you firing him because this year he hasn't been as good as he was in years past?
I'm firing him because he's never won a Super Bowl and he never will, and his best days are behind him. And his best days weren't good enough.
Any of that.
I'll say it again. I'm firing him because he's never won a Super Bowl. He never will, and his best days are behind him.
How do you know he never will?
Because he can't beat Andy Reid. He can't beat Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. He's one of the worst coaches in football history in one-score games. In one-score games, coaches who have been in 40 plus of them, 125. He ranks 118 out of 125 in one-score games. That ain't it. You're not going to win a Super Bowl blowing out the other team. Maybe you will, but he can't. In 3 Super Bowl appearances, he's put up 21 points, 20 points, and 22 points. That's him. He did. The offensive genius. His dad.
Hold on. We're
put
not
up more
talking about
points.
Mike Shanahan. Who gives a crap about Mike Shanahan? He's not the coach of this team. Forget Mike Shanahan.
If he was, they might have won some Super Bowls.
John Harbaugh hasn't won a Super Bowl in 12 years. No one's saying John Harbaugh should be fired.
Why are you comparing Kyle Shanahan to Super Bowl champions? I don't understand that.
Because you're saying 8
That's
years.
disrespectful to people with rings.
You're saying 8 years is too long to go without a Super Bowl. I just brought up 2 coaches.
But Kyle has gone 45 years without a Super Bowl. 45.
Oh, you're dinging him for the Super
He's
Bowl?
never, ever won a Super Bowl. So comparing him to champions is just disrespectful.
So what you're saying is if you won it, are you okay? You're back. You're saying if you won a Super Bowl, then you can never be fired, no matter how long.
Those guys have proven they can get the job done. Kyle hasn't proven he can get the job done. There is proof of concept with those guys. Proof of concept. Kyle doesn't have it. All he has are people like you on social media who claim that he's the best. That's all he's got.
I didn't say he's the best. I said he shouldn't be fired.
Ever. No matter what.
I didn't say that either. Again, who are you arguing with? Because apparently it's
I asked you how many years it would take, and you wouldn't even 15 years if he doesn't go with the Super Bowl. You still might want him around. 15.
Are they going to NFC championship games? Are they going to Super Bowls, or is he winning 1 game a year? Like, I need more information.
I'm asking you, man, what would it take for you to lose confidence and say, fire Kyle? And you won't answer the question.
You never asked me that.
I'm asking you.
I would take multiple years of them not making the playoffs and looking worse. That's what it would take.
So if they make the playoffs every other year, you're good forever.
No, not necessarily. Do you just make the playoffs? Are you going to the NFC championship game? Are you going to the Super Bowl? Or are you getting beat in the wild card round and not winning a game? You know,
so if this guy maintains his status as a high-level loser for 25 years, you're in.
If they're going to NFC championship games and Super Bowls, I would be very, I would have to see who you want to replace him with.
So if he goes to a 4th Super Bowl, has a lead at halftime, then passes the ball 70% of the time in the second half and loses, you're cool with him running it back even though he never changes? Because you know that's his pattern, right? In all his 3 Super Bowls, he's had leads in the second half, and he's run the ball 65 to 70% of the time and lost. In all 3, with leads and no Hall of Fame quarterback. No reason to pass the ball that much. Meanwhile, his dad in 3 Super Bowl wins with Hall of Fame quarterbacks ran the ball 50 to 60% of the time in the second half.
Who cares about his dad? I don't care.
Because they run the same system. They have the same philosophy. One guy has 3 rings. One guy has none. It's the same system.
I don't care about his dad. His dad is irrelevant to
Yeah,
this.
who cares about a guy who actually has rings? Because there's no difference.
It doesn't matter what his dad is. His dad's not the coach of the team.
It doesn't matter how his dad won his Super Bowls and how Kyle lost his. I think it's definitely germane.
How Kyle's dad did anything is irrelevant. And you keep trying to ding Kyle for losing a Super Bowl in overtime by 3 points to Patrick Mahomes. Like,
he beat himself. No. He didn't lose to Patrick Mahomes. He lost to himself. He lost to himself in 2016. He lost to himself in 2019. He lost to himself in 2023. He had leads in all 3 second halves, and he's over there passing the ball last week, 3 days ago. He's up 17-13 against the Seahawks. 2nd and 11, he throws a pass. Run the ball.
No, he should have thrown a pass. That was
Run the ball. Your job is not to score points here. You're up 4. You have the lead. Your job is to bleed the clock, and he doesn't get it. You know why? Because he's one of the worst coaches ever in one-score games.
No,
demonstrably.
You're incorrect.
No, I'm 100% correct. He's one of the worst coaches ever in one-score games.
Can I finish talking, or are you going to jump in and interrupt me before I can finish my point?
You said I was incorrect, but I was correct.
No, you're incorrect because he is trying to bleed the clock by throwing the ball. Because he
stopped the clock himself.
He's trying to maintain possession of the
and
ball.
Throw a screen.
Bleed the clock.
Have an extended handoff. You threw the ball over the middle, 15 yards. Like, you just stopped the clock for that team. That was great for them.
His quarterback to make a throw to an open receiver. Imagine that. Oh my God, it's criminal. But it's easy.
It's Brock.
Hey,
it's football. You're up 4. You run the ball. Even when his dad had John Elway or Steve Young running the ball to win games, is how you do it. Kyle is trying to pass the ball to win games, and he hasn't done it yet. This is how he loses the close games every time.
Hold on. Let me think, since we want to bring up Mike Shanahan in the Super Bowl. How did the 49ers beat the Chargers in the Super Bowl? Oh, that's right. Steve Young threw 6 touchdown passes.
And despite that, in the second half, they ran the ball 19 times and threw the ball 18 times. You know why? Because Mike's not stupid.
They were up by 1 billion points.
Kyle was up by 25 points against the Patriots. And you know what he did? Passed. He did.
He did.
And then he did it twice more in the Super Bowl with the Niners. This is who he is, man. You want to see him? If he ever makes it back to the Super Bowl with the Niners, he'll do it again. I'll bet you $10 right now.
Let's wait to see if Kyle fires his offensive line coach. This year's problem isn't the play calls, it's the lack of line blocking. Watch Johnny Dale Football Academy and Super Bowl, the offensive line missed blocks. That's another thing. Some of it is coaching. Sometimes players miss blocks too, and that's on the player. It's on both. It's not all one or the other. But I just think that when you have a coach that's gone to 4 of the past 5 NFC Championship games, that's gone to 2 Super Bowls, he has 1 down year with an aging team, and you want to fire him. Other teams, when they hear like what 49ers fans are saying, go look at what other teams' fans are saying. They're saying, oh my God, please. Why would the 49ers do something that's stupid? Please hire Kyle Shanahan.
Great. Chicago, good luck. You know who will fail in Chicago? Kyle. Go ahead. Try that.
Oh, sorry.
The New York Giants, you trade for him, man. Go ahead.
I missed this.
Go find out what we already know about this guy. Figure it out.
Official B&A Music. Losing to Eugene C. Smith III with the best roster would get any other coach at minimum criticized. He can't fail enough to be considered a failure because he's better than Chip Kelly. First of all, it's not the best roster. Not this year. It's not the best roster.
4th best.
Yeah, it's not.
Rob. We had an argument like 8 years ago when Chip Kelly was the head coach of this team. And I remember we went back and forth on Twitter a long time. You did not think they should fire Chip Kelly. It seems to me that your natural inclination is to be patient with a coach, which I understand, man. But it's 8 years. There's only been one coach in the history of the NFL who won a Super Bowl more than 8 years into their tenure with their first team. It was Bill Cowher. One guy. And he didn't lose 2 Super Bowls. He lost 1. So maybe Kyle's the next Bill Cowher, but I don't think he is.
I want to throw this up on the screen, if I may, if it ever loads. In the meantime, I'll read this. Joseph says, do you believe Kyle should leave more space for the nobodies like younger players and coaching? I think he's too logical and probable and should become more confident in the face of the unknown. I don't really understand the question. Do you understand what he's asking?
Do you believe Kyle should leave more space for the nobodies like younger players and coaching? I think he's too logical and probable and should become more confident in the face of... No, I have no idea. I'm sorry. Okay. Joseph, I love you.
Yeah.
I don't
understand. Ask it again. I apologize. I'd love to answer
I just don't know.
Yeah,
I could make some assumptions, but I don't know.
Can you name the coach I have on the screen right now?
Well, it looks like Andy Reid.
1-4 in the playoffs, blown leads in 4 of his 5 playoff games, lost a 28-point lead, lost an 18-point lead, had the most career playoff games coached without a Super Bowl win. That's Andy Reid just with the Chiefs before Patrick Mahomes got there. That's Andy Reid. So the same guy that people say was magically transformed by being fired and changing teams before he got the greatest quarterback of his generation was the exact same dude. In fact, Andy Reid has more 18-point leads blown in the playoffs, or has the same amount of 18-point leads blown in the playoffs than every other coach in the history of the NFL combined. So the idea,
but Andy Reid won a Super Bowl in his 7th season with Kansas City. So Kyle's already past that. He's already past that, man. We're in year 8, man, and it's not going to happen in year 8 for Kyle. It's not going to happen in year 8. So maybe he wins his first Super Bowl in year 9.
But this idea that Andy Reid was a totally different coach because he got fired and had to change jobs is incorrect. He got Patrick Mahomes and then hired the greatest defensive coordinator of all time.
He wasn't going to get Patrick Mahomes in Philly. So Philly could have held on to him for 30 years. They weren't going to win a Super Bowl with him. They needed a fresh start. He needed a fresh start. He didn't even want Patrick Mahomes. Brett Veach did.
How do you know he wasn't going to get Patrick Mahomes?
Because he didn't even want Patrick Mahomes. Brett Veach did.
They could have traded up to get him.
But they didn't. Brett Veach did. What the fuck you talking about? Sorry.
Well, at what point in the draft were the Eagles?
Howie Roseman didn't do that. Howie Roseman traded up for Carson Wentz.
Who was their quarterback at the time?
Howie Roseman didn't do it. He traded up for Carson Wentz.
But they weren't in the draft the same year.
Okay. But they needed a quarterback.
Did they? In 2017? Who was the Eagles quarterback in 2017?
Carson Wentz.
And wasn't he coming off like that MVP season?
But
so why would
he's not that good? He's Mahomes' backup. I'm just saying, man. One guy saw the opportunity, and it wasn't Andy Reid. It wasn't Howie Roseman. It was Brett Veach.
But you think if Andy Reid didn't say, all right, I want Patrick Mahomes, that they wouldn't have drafted him? He maybe didn't want him at first.
I'm thinking that if Andy Reid had stayed at Philly for 40 years, he wouldn't have won a Super Bowl. He needed a fresh start. It wasn't going well for him in Philly. That team had tanked. That team was going bad.
He needed Patrick Mahomes. That's the difference in Andy Reid. That's the difference. It's not that he had this epiphany that you're hoping that Kyle Shanahan has if he gets another job. He
wasn't going to get Patrick Mahomes in Philly, man. So, okay. But you know who's not also going to get Patrick Mahomes? Kyle. He's not getting Patrick Mahomes.
No, he's not, because he could have drafted.
And he's not going to beat Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to beat Josh Allen in 2 weeks, and he's not going to beat Lamar Jackson if he ever faces him again. He has a limit. We've seen it. It's year 8. If you want to wait 6 more years to see the same stuff and get the same confirmation, same evidence, cool. I don't care. I don't root for this team. It's a lot of fun covering Kyle Shanahan. It's the best.
Couldn't you have said that all this about 2020? Why didn't you fire him in 2020? They had a bad year in 2020 after they made the Super Bowl.
Well, he had excuses in 2020. His quarterback went down week 2. His defensive player of the year, who didn't win it yet, went down week 2. He had legitimate excuses. He had to play the whole year with Nick Mullins. This year, he's got the 4th highest graded roster in the league. He's got Brock Purdy. He's got Nick Bosa up until the second half of last week. Like, I just don't see the excuses. And what people say is like, well, it doesn't matter. He was great in the past. Okay, but there's no excuse for how bad of a job he's doing this year. None.
There's no excuse?
There's no excuse for how bad of a job he's doing this year. He's
a ton of less. Facing 4 teams coming off a bye more than anyone.
Oh my God.
The league.
They got to face the Seahawks coming off a bye.
And you have the worst rest differential ever.
Dude, cry me a river.
There's no reasons for it. Again.
Rest differential. Yeah, my God. This team, a couple of years ago, when they would face teams, they would beat them up so bad.
It's not a couple years ago. This team is older. They're at the end of their run. They need to restock the cupboard.
They're as burnt out as he is.
Yeah, that's what happens, dude. Guess what?
He got burnt out, and so did they.
They're going to take a year. They probably, I don't know, but it seems unlikely that they make the playoffs this year. With another good draft, there's no reason why they can't be right back competing for NFC Championship games and Super Bowl.
You know why they won't, though? Because Kyle's burnt out. Because Kyle's not what he was in the past, man. It's right in front of your face, dude. It's not going to happen for him anymore.
They have
Here.
the second
It's
most
over.
yards per game in the league. What are we talking
It's
about?
over.
Same guy.
It's over. They're 5-5 with no excuse for it, man. They can bring him back next year and they'll be mediocre again. He will be a mediocre coach as long as he's here. It's over.
2 years ago, they were 5-5 and they made the NFC championship.
That was 2 years ago. Now it's year 8. Now it's year 8, and he's got no excuse for how bad he is.
They're
You went to rest differential, man. That's pathetic.
They're 500. What are you talking about? How bad they are? They're not.
They're in last place in their division.
Yeah, and they're also.
You didn't think they're going to be 5-5 when the season started. They should be 8-2.
They're also a game out of first place in their division. So
you just said this. They're not going to make the playoffs. You just said that.
I said it's unlikely that they make the playoffs. Yeah,
that's true. They
okay.
got a 29% chance to make it.
So
that's a guy who's on the hot seat, man. That's a guy who's underperforming by incredible. I mean,
he's having one.
Again, who is underperforming more than Kyle this year among him? You didn't name one guy, not one. Who is it? It ain't John Harbaugh. It ain't Jim Harbaugh. Who? The guy in Cleveland. He's underperforming. He's doing a bad job, but his team sucks.
I didn't expect them to be any
good.
Right?
So, hey, maybe Mike McDaniel.
I'm not
Kyle's
saying Kyle's best season. I'm just saying
Nico's not doing that great of a job, but they're all doing better than Kyle.
I'm not saying he should be fired. That's it.
Okay. So he's having the worst season of his career. We can't really explain why, and you think it's going to all go away and he'll be better next year. Why?
Explained why. What are you talking about?
Because they'll have better rest differential next year, and the team will be healthier.
Because the team is older. They're at the end of their run. They need to restock with young players.
Even older next year.
Well, they're going to get more young players, though. They're going to transition players in and out of the team.
You think Kyle Shanahan's getting rid of Debo and Juszczyk? In what world? No. They're not getting rid of those guys.
They almost got rid of Juszczyk last year.
No, they didn't. They took some money from him. They no way were they getting rid. They got rid of Armstead. They're not getting rid of Juszczyk. They're not getting rid of Juszczyk or Debo this offseason. I guarantee it. Over Kyle's dead body.
He's shown the propensity to get rid of longtime players that have been there for a really long time.
Not if they're friends with him. Debo's his best friend. It's not happening. Who would he talk to? No.
I think that it's easy to say fire the guy when he's having a down year. It gets a lot of clicks. It gets a lot of attention. People are out for.
I'm being disingenuous.
Yes, I think you are.
I'm being disingenuous.
Yes, I think you are.
I think that's the mark of someone who lost a debate. That you're saying that I can't even argue in a non-disingenuous fashion. You lost. You went to rest differential, man. That's the weakest argument I've ever heard. But I still love you.
I mean, again, you could say everything is an excuse. It's easy to, if your argument is, oh, that's an excuse, that's an excuse, that's an excuse.
Rest differential.
You dismiss any reason.
That's why the Niners are 5-5 because of rest differential. Like you're lying to yourself.
It's not.
They're 5-5 because Kyle's having a terrible season. That's why they're 5-5.
It's not all one thing. You keep trying to make straw men with my arguments. You keep trying to dismiss the.
You went to injuries and rest. Dude, they blew 3 fourth-quarter leads to bad teams. That's why they're where they are.
Some of it is Kyle Shanahan too. I've never denied that. I've never denied that.
All you gotta do is get the Niners in a 1-score game, and they have like a 60% chance of losing if you just keep it close. Kyle will find a way to lose if it's close.
So what you're telling me is the Niners either win big or lose by a small amount. Boy, what a terrible coach. What a terrible coach.
Cool. I mean, I'm glad you enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. Year 8, 5-5, and it's going to be 5-7 in a minute too. It's going to get worse. This isn't rock bottom. It's only going to get worse.
It's going to get worse before it gets.
It's going to get real bad.
Beating Detroit, and they're not beating Buffalo. They very easily could lose to Green Bay. So the heat on Kyle is going to get worse. No question about it. It's going to be, at least in San Francisco, it will.
Yeah, man. So if they're 8-9, I just don't think the rest excuse is going to do much for season ticket holders. And then next year, again, I asked you, like, what is going to be the hope? Oh, Christian McCaffrey will be younger. Kittle will be younger. Like, Purdy will be 60 times more expensive. Like, to me, I see, if they bring it back next year, I see another mediocre season at best. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to make changes to the roster in the offseason. They're going to get younger. They're going to get hungrier players. They're going to get players that aren't burnt out from this run. I don't think he's just going to do nothing and have the exact same team come back.
Kyle loves vets, though. He brought in Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, Devondre Campbell. If you're not 30 years old, Kyle doesn't really trust you.
Malik Collins has been okay.
Yeah, he's, okay.
He's been okay.
He's been a C+.
He's a C+, B-. That's a fine addition. They're not 5-5 because of Malik Collins.
No, but he's not like an impact player. Like, you like someone better. They were a lot better when they had Buckner and Armstead in their prime. But yeah, he's on the field doing stuff.
Javon Hargrave was supposed to be the impact player, and you're seeing the effects of some of those misses. You're seeing the effects of missing on Javon Kinlaw, and you're seeing the effect of Drake Jackson being
Trey
nothing.
Lance.
Robert Beal being nothing.
Trey Lance.
The Trey Lance thing is not. It's the players that they did pick that are hurting them, not the players that they didn't get to pick because of the Trey Lance thing. They picked Trey Sermon. They picked Ty Davis-Price. They picked Danny Gray. Those are whiffs. Like, they would have been fine with the Trey Lance trade if the guys they had drafted hadn't been so bad. That's the real.
Can we Pearsall for a second too? Like, I know it's a little blasphemous, and he got shot, and he maybe he's going to round into all-pro form, but like, Ladd McConkey's looking really good, and he got taken 3 picks after Pearsall. Like, I know he had a slow start, but they can't just keep not throwing him the ball when Ladd McConkey's going for 120 plus. He's the first round pick. He needs to produce now.
Well, he was. He didn't produce much last week, but the week before he was great.
He was great.
Yeah.
What do you do? We have 60 yards.
You had a problem with Ricky Pearsall 2 weeks
ago? He was great. I mean, like that. He was good. I like him, but he needs to produce.
Ricky Pearsall 2 weeks ago had 4 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown.
Nice. Okay. Do it again.
And it was like a 49-yard touchdown.
Cool. And then he had no catches in this last game. So I'm not saying it's his fault, but like, they need to keep going to him because Debo isn't helping you. Yeah. And other rookies are producing. So seems like he can do it. Go back to him.
But like, see, the dude got shot. He's played like 3 career games. He's looked better and better every time, but last week he wasn't involved much in the game plan, and now it's like a huge coaching deficiency of Kyle Shanahan. Like,
they scored 17 points, dude. Yeah, his personnel decisions are under the microscope right now. He scored 17 points. You can't get the ball to Ricky Pearsall, who scored a touchdown the last week, and you don't play Jordan Mason? Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
But like, Ricky Pearsall could have a great week next week.
Good. Then I'll take credit for it.
I know. Coach's Huddle says Kyle's obsessed with winning the play while losing the game and always ends up doing both in clutch moments. Run the damn ball, period. Fish and chips. Rob, you prove players carry Reid and Kyle Shanahan point prove. I don't know what that means. Helperman 123. Kyle has 62% fail rate in close games with 7 points. Poor Sports Illustrated. Grant is with Kyle. The stats are with Grant, not with the stats guy. Matt McCune says they haven't beaten a winning team this year. That is true. Matt McCune says Kyle doesn't play younger players. Well, he's playing Dominic Pooney. He's playing Ricky Pearsall. He's playing Malik Mustafa. He's playing Renardo Green. Right?
What are you asking me, man? You talking to Matt McCune?
Fish and chips. Rob, it's buddy ball. That's how we got CMC. I don't know what that means. They got CMC because they traded a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round pick for Christian McCaffrey. Coach's Huddle says Andy Reid built McNabb, revived Vic, was Brett Favre's coach before he got Mahomes, stopped the cap. Andy didn't just get Pat, and it was easy from day one. It's levels on top of his development of the offensive line. Hold on. Patrick Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns the first year he was a starter. Yeah, it was easy from day one with Patrick Mahomes. What are we talking about? And again, Andy Reid with McNabb, with Vic, with Favre. Well, I shouldn't put Favre because that was before he was the head coach. But with McNabb and with Vic, had all those playoff problems that I outlined earlier. Like, what are we doing here?
He's not Andy Reid. Andy Reid isn't the worst coach in one-score games.
I didn't say he's Andy Reid. What I said was Andy Reid is now Andy Reid the way we think of him because he got Patrick Mahomes and Steve Spagnuolo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at no point in Andy Reid's career, 8 years into his freaking career, was he 396 in one-score games. That's alarming, man.
So what?
It's alarming.
Like,
it's worse than alarming.
Games? What about all the blowout victories he's had?
Where have those been? Are those coming back soon? I missed those.
Okay, so they're not doing it this year as much, but when you look
at it, because they're at a rest disadvantage.
They are
because Ayuk's hurt.
A lot of teams, but we're going to ignore all that. We're only going to focus on this one thing. We're going to ignore all the other good stuff. Why?
Hey, man, I just don't feel like the blowouts are coming back anytime soon. Like, they're not going to happen this year. And then next year, when you're paying your quarterback $60 million a year, you have to gut your roster. Like, they're not coming back. Once you pay the quarterback that much money, you're in close games for the next 5 years. And this dude can't win them.
How do you know they're not going to have another draft class like they just had and kick the hell out of people next year?
Dude, with this draft class, they're 5-5.
Yeah, and they need more.
They didn't change anything.
They need more help. They need more of those type of players.
All right, well, Ricky Pearsall, here we go.
Official B&A Music says between rest differential and throwing to bleed the clock, I need stats dealer under the jail ASAP. I mean, nobody thought that they were going to be able to run the ball 2 more times when they hadn't run the ball all day and finished bleeding that clock.
That's because they didn't use Jordan Mason. Yeah, with Christian McCaffrey, they weren't going to close that game out.
Jordan Mason would have fixed everything. Would have fixed all.
He would have gained more yards when he ran the ball. That's a big thing for running backs.
Prove it. How do you know that? It's easy to say. How do you know?
Because he averaged 6.5 yards per carry, and McCaffrey averaged 4.2.
Maybe the run blocking on those plays was better. How do you know Christian McCaffrey wouldn't have averaged the same exact thing?
Maybe one guy gets more yards after contact than another. Oh, that's actually statistically proven.
Was he even touched on those plays? Are those plays all yards after contact?
Has Jordan Mason played all season? Are there stats that quantify yards after contact? I think there are.
On those plays that you're talking about in that game, did all those yards that he gained come from yards after contact?
Is it fair to say that Jordan Mason would have had a better chance to gain yards than Christian McCaffrey down the stretch? Yes, it is.
No.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Because one guy's in midseason form, the other guy has no burst. One guy's one of the most difficult guys to tackle in the league. The other guy isn't.
How did Christian McCaffrey have 2 games with over 100 yards from scrimmage then?
Catching passes. What's he averaging on the ground the last 2 games?
He ran
less than 4 yards per carry.
He ran.
How many yards after contact has he gotten on the ground the last 2 games?
He ran for 39 yards in the game against the Bucs.
Against one of the worst defenses in football.
His first game back from injury. And last week he ran for 79 yards on the ground.
He averaged 4.2 yards per carry. Against, again, a terrible team playing 2 high safeties the whole time.
Yeah, but Jordan Mason had 2 carries, so that's your guy.
No, but he's had a lot more carries than that this year, and he's been good every single time.
But you're talking about the carries in this game that proved that he would have gained more yards than Christian McCaffrey would have gained.
If you are honestly arguing that you don't think playing Jordan Mason would have made the Niners better, then I can't really take you seriously today, man.
No, I don't know that it would have. If the run blocking is not good, it doesn't matter who's back there. It's not a ding on Jordan Mason. This just in. Breaking news. Running backs need good run blocking ahead of them. But it's easy to say because we're all mad that the 49ers lost. So it's easy to say, well, do the thing you didn't do, and then everything would have been better. Fire Kyle Shanahan, get another guy, everything will be better. Play Jordan Mason, everything will be better. The backup is always the most popular guy because we're just mad that what we have didn't work out. It's the easiest thing in the world to sit there.
He literally ran well against the Seahawks a month ago. He's healthy. He's in better football shape than Christian McCaffrey. And you're like, gee, I don't know who's a better option here. All right, man, fine. I'm not going to convince you
because
you're happy.
You're not.
You represent like the 25% of Niner fans who are really juiced with the way the season's going. So cool.
Again, like you're not arguing with me. You're just making stuff up and arguing with that because it's easier.
You're happy. You could take another 7 years of this. As long as they make the playoffs sometimes.
I'm not happy that they're 5-5. I've never stated that. Never once have I ever said that.
You're undeterred. You are undeterred. You're still with the program.
Yes, I'm undeterred.
Great.
Jason PDSI says, Rob, look at Kyle. Look at Rob defend Kyle like Jimmy Stans defended Jimmy. I mean, comparing Jimmy Garoppolo to Kyle Shanahan is certainly a choice. Feel free to do that. Joseph said, nobody's being people. Kyle needs better relationships, sort of like an unknown Saleh or McDaniels. I bet Sorensen wasn't a coach that fit in Kyle's high esteem, but he settled for. Kyle needs intervention. I still don't quite know what you mean, but D'Amico Ryans was an unknown, and Kyle hired him, and he was dead on balls accurate.
I still haven't got an answer from you on why Kyle Shanahan is having such a bad year. You went to injuries and rest. No. Why is Kyle Shanahan having the worst year of his career now? I want to know.
I mean, we're really still talking about this?
Why?
Because the team is at the end of their development.
So it's not him. It's nothing about him. It's the roster.
Again, for the 3rd time, some of it is Kyle Shanahan.
What is him then? Be specific, buddy.
His game management is not good and hasn't been good. And when
right,
you're
the one-score game thing, right? Okay.
when you're
With
not, can you shut up and let me talk, please?
Sure.
When you're not as talented, or way more, I should say, when you're not way more talented than the other teams, you need better game management than
They're
others.
way more talented than the Seahawks. What are we talking about?
I'm talking about overall on the year. When you're not way more talented than the other teams, the game management decisions impact the game more. Kyle is not as good as he needs to be in that area. So, because they don't have the talent to compensate for that, they are losing those games. That's why.
So if he doesn't have a talent advantage, he's in trouble.
He needs to. No, he's not in trouble. Again, they've won a ton of games over the past few years. But when games do get closer, those decisions matter more, and he doesn't make the best decisions in those spots.
Okay. So the team isn't as dominant. They're in more close games, and he's not good at coaching in close games. But next year, they'll go back to blowing teams out.
Maybe he will change his game management philosophies. Because I think there's an element of this, too.
Okay.
You can sit here and say, Kyle needs to evolve. Kyle needs to change this. Kyle needs to change that. But I also think Kyle sits back and he's like, damn, man, we've been in 4 NFC championship games in the last 5 years and 2 Super Bowls. It's working. Now, this year, if they don't make the playoffs, he can't say it's working, right? He doesn't have that to fall back on, especially if they finish with a losing record. Then you really have to say, like, damn. But he
okay, I want to answer my question now since you didn't answer it. Why is Kyle Shanahan having the worst season of his career? Because the second Super Bowl loss broke him. It broke him. He's not recovered emotionally, spiritually, in any way from that loss. And his team hasn't either. Because they're looking at him like, hey, man, when we're in these close games, you're going to find a way to mess it up because he does. That's what's happening.
He was not great in close games before the Super Bowl, the second Super Bowl loss.
And he's having the worst season of his career.
So
he has not gotten over the Super Bowl loss. This is the Super Bowl hangover. He is morose. He's burnt out. You can see it all over his face. He hasn't recovered from this loss, man. And I don't know that he ever will. It's hard to lose 2 Super Bowls when you don't have a ring to fall back on. You don't.
I just think you're throwing out a whole bunch of unprovable stuff here.
I don't think he's recovered from this loss. I think you can't quantify what losing a Super Bowl like that for the second time to the same team does. You had the lead again. You blew it again. You did it the same way. You were passing in the third quarter when you should have been running up. It's on you. And the whole team knows it, man. And you didn't know the rules in overtime.
Stop saying that.
You can laugh.
Stop saying that. That's a lie. That's a lie.
It's not a lie. He didn't know the rules in overtime. Kyle Shanahan.
Prove it.
Kyle Shanahan didn't know the rules in overtime. Just ask Kyle Juszczyk or Eric Armstead.
Responsible for someone with a platform as big as you. That's just a flat out lie, and it's irresponsible.
It's not a lie. Relax, buddy.
It's a lie.
Nah, it's not.
How do you know?
It's the truth.
Did they
it's the
tell
truth.
you?
He changed the story 3 times after the game. He changed the story 3 times.
What are you talking about? He knew the rule. He made the bet. The knock on Kyle Shanahan in that spot is not that he didn't know the rule. It's that he knew the rule and
I'm not arguing with this, you man. You sound like a Kyle Shanahan fan. He didn't know the rule.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
I mean, you could keep repeating it, but that doesn't make it true.
That's what you're doing. He didn't know the rule, man.
Based on what? Prove it.
All right, man. Good show. Have a good one, everyone.